Brought to you by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. JMRNY.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey, and today on the program, we're talking about horror movies. Later, I'll be speaking with actor-director Robbie Banfitch about his found footage horror film, The Outwaters. But first, here's a look at the selection of horror movies here in 2023. Now, we've already had several horror films hit theaters this year, including M. Night Shyamalan's Knock the Cabin, starring Dave Bautista, Jonathan Groff, and Rupert Grint. In that film, a family is taken hostage by armed strangers who demand that they make a choice in order to avert an apocalypse. So far, the film has done pretty well with audiences and critics alike, scoring a 68% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 65% audience score, earning $14 million on its opening weekend with just a budget of $20 million. Let's see if it outperforms Shyamalan's previous film, Old, which earned $90 million worldwide on just an $18 million budget. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Fear. It's a low-budget horror film about a group of people who gather in the Tahoe Mountains in a lodge in an attempt to escape a worldwide pandemic. At the time of this taping, the film sits at 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, earning less than $2 million at the box office. But for a movie like this, that might not be an issue, depending on the budget, which has not yet been disclosed. One of the reasons films like this keep getting made is because they're relatively low risk. They can be made independently on low budgets and still turn a profit. You don't need big stars, or as 645 director Craig Singer said to me, these movies aren't star dependent, they're scare dependent. So have you seen Fear? What did you think of it? Did it live up to its name? Let me know. Also released this year is Missing. In this film, a young woman's mother goes missing, and she must now try to find her using tools available to her on the internet. They're calling this one a standalone sequel to Searching, which involved a man played by John Cho looking for his daughter. Now, these films are largely on a computer screen. They're probably more thriller than horror. Searching had a budget of under $1 million, and it made over $75 million worldwide, so it makes perfect sense that we're going to get more of these. Both films also did extremely well with critics, certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Out of Australia, we have Run, Rabbit, Run. This stars Sarah Snook of Succession fame. She stars as a fertility doctor who notices that her young daughter is behaving strangely, and now she must challenge her own values and confront a ghost from her past. Now, this one was kind of underground. It came out in late January to not much fanfare. It certainly seems like an interesting premise. It hasn't done well with critics. It only scored 36% on the tomato meter. The consensus being it's kind of short on scares, strong performances, but it's got way too many horror cliches. Now, my suggestion would be to watch Succession, because Snook is great on that show, and billionaires with media empires are still pretty scary. All right, coming up on April 21st, we've got the next installment of the Evil Dead franchise. We first reported on this back in January. It's called Evil Dead Rise. It's directed by Lee Cronin and is written by Cronin and Sam Raimi. This one promises to take the action out of the woods and into the city. Here's what IMDb has for the synopsis. A twisted tale of two estranged sisters whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle of survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family. All right, we got blood and violence and demons. It's an Evil Dead movie. Are you guys excited for this one? Who are my Evil Deaders out there? Evil Deadheads? I don't know what you call yourselves. Are you going to watch this one, or maybe just stay home and watch your Evil Dead 2 on Blu-ray? All right, so this next one is interesting to me. Set for release on August 11th, it's The Last Voyage of the Demeter. It's based on a single chapter of the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. Now, the Demeter is the name of the ship that Dracula takes from Transylvania to London. The novel Dracula is an epistolary, so it's made up of all these different letters and journal entries from all these different characters. So you're essentially getting all these different points of view. It's kind of like a Scorsese movie when you hear all the different voiceovers. Now, this chapter of the book is the captain's log from the Demeter. And according to IMDb, the film will detail the strange events that befell the doomed crew as they attempt to survive the ocean voyage, stalked each night by the terrifying presence of Dracula. So it's a brief scene in the film Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola. So to me, it's going to be interesting to see if they can make a whole movie out of this. It stars David Dastmalchian, Liam Cunningham, and Javier Botet, who will play Dracula. He also starred as the Crooked Man in Conjuring 2, which leads me to my next film coming up in September. It's The Nun 2, the sequel to The Nun. Now, this is part of the Conjuring cinematic universe. Like its predecessor, this film will also involve a scary nun. The first Nun film made over $365 million on just a $22 million budget. So, of course, we're going to get more of these. I don't know if James Wan really gets enough credit for starting this cinematic universe. Since the original Conjuring back in 2013, a full decade ago, we've had Annabelle, Conjuring 2, Annabelle Creation, The Nun, The Curse of La Llorona, Annabelle Comes Home, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and now we've got The Nun 2. 8 films in 10 years. That's impressive. And they've all done relatively well. This is basically the horror answer to Marvel without having to spend $150 million on each movie. Not too shabby. The Nun 2 will be in theaters on September 8th. All right, so not to be outnunned, coming to Netflix later this year, the Spanish language horror Sister Death. Now, there's no release date as of the time of this taping, but the film is set in post-war Spain, where a young novice nun with supernatural powers becomes a teacher at a school that used to be her convent. Strange events and increasingly disturbing situations start happening. Secrets are revealed. There's haunting. It's a horror movie. There's not a lot of info on this yet, but currently IMDb has it listed as being in post-production. It sounds interesting. Let's see if Netflix can deliver. Up next, we've got an update on the upcoming Exorcist film. This fall, on October 13th, we have what they're calling The Exorcist. Perhaps we'll get some subtitle later. So far, we know that it will be a sequel to the 1973 film. It'll star Ellen Burstyn, who will reprise her role as Chris McNeil. It also stars Leslie Odom Jr. and Ann Dowd. The original Exorcist is a classic, and it's one of the seminal films of the genre. It stars Ellen Burstyn, who plays a woman whose daughter is possessed by a demon, so she enlists the help of 2 priests, played by Jason Miller and Max von Sydow. The daughter is played by the amazing Linda Blair. It's one of those films that scared the bejesus out of people when they first saw it. People were literally running out of the theaters in 1973. It's grounded in some wonderful performances. Burstyn is magnificent. She's an amazing actor. Now, I don't know how well that movie would hold up for a modern audience. The film uses a lot of practical effects, many of which still hold up in my opinion, but I don't know how a young person would react to that film, given how much farther horror movies have gone, especially with effects. Other than the fact that a good IP never dies in Hollywood, I really don't know why this movie is getting made. I suspect it has something to do with how well the Halloween reboot did. It's refreshing that Ellen Burstyn is coming back and the cast looks really strong. Maybe this is the reboot that The Exorcist needs. All right, so let me know what you think of these films. What are you excited to see this year? Have you seen any of these so far? Leave me a comment if you're watching this online, or you can tweet at us at BTR Productions. Another horror feature that hit theaters this year is The Outwaters. I caught up with the film's director, Robbie Banfitch. Welcome, Robbie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you. Thank you for making us part of your junket. I know you're doing a bunch of interviews for this. Congrats on the movie, by the way. I hear you guys getting some great press. But I want to talk to you about this film because, oh boy, it's a lot of movie and a lot of stuff happens in it. And I don't want to spoil anything, obviously. But for those who haven't seen us, can you give us like a little setup about it? Like what happens in the film?
Yes, a group of friends goes out to the Mojave Desert to shoot a music video and kind of like catch a tan and like listen to some tunes and sing, and then something bad happens to them that they were not expecting. And I usually keep it pretty vague like that. I'm not a fan of like um a spoiler. So I like going into movies blind. So that's usually how I describe it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, things happen. Um, it's a very horror movie type premise. You got, four young people going out into a desert. What could possibly go wrong? What I was curious about was what the inspiration was for it. Um, I mean, hopefully none of this actually happened, but what was the inspiration behind the story?
One very strong idea from the beginning was something horrible can happen when you least expect it and just kind of tear everything apart. Um, but that's something that I think most people experience at some point, whether it's a death or a car accident. So, something really awful can come in and just totally fuck up your life. Um, so that was an inspiration. Other than that, I wanted to make a found footage movie because I knew I could make one on my own and kind of get my career rolling. And the title Outwaters is where I built the story from. So the title is kind of where I started.
What does the title mean for people who don't know?
It's not a real word. It's inspired by the word outlands, which can mean like a distant region, a distant country, distant part of the country. So I thought Outwaters with all the water. That's my jersey coming out with waters. Different meanings could be even further than that. So even for me, Outwaters means even further than further.
So you mentioned you want to make a found footage movie. Were you a fan of found footage movies? Was this like, did you feel like this was the best style to capture this story, or was it strictly like, this is the budget we got, and this is the type of movie we need to make if we want to get this done?
It was more that, although I certainly built the story around knowing that it was going to be found footage. I mean, I'm a fan of found footage if I think it's a good movie, like any other movie. At the end of the day, it's just a film, so it just depends on whether I think it's like good or not.
Were there any particular found footage type movies that you inspire? I mean, because let's face it, since like Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, um, these types of movies, we've had X number of found footage movies.
The original Blair Witch Project is a
That was that was a big inspiration for you
yeah. Ever since it was made, I it's one of my favorite films.
because we've had so many of these different types of found footage movies. What makes this one special?
Hopefully, because it goes back to the roots of the footage being feeling found as opposed to a polished, glossy Hollywood thing, which I think a lot of found footage movies these days can feel like. They're shot on really beautiful cameras, and there's conversations that you would never have on camera that are there for exposition or plot. So if you're seeking something that hopefully, if I've done my job well, feels authentically found, which to me is the point of found footage, then this might be a good thing to watch. Also, I tried to like have some pretty cinematography in there.
Yeah, I noticed that you've got some Terrence Malick esque type stuff in there. Was he an influence?
100% the pitch, if I were giving it in a pitch meeting, would be like it's like Blair Witch Project, but like if Terrence Malick went to hell. Not that I'm comparing myself to Terrence Malick. That's the pitch.
I think that's what kind of makes the movie unique. And you're right. We do see a lot of these found footage movies, and it's like, oh, the camera they just happen to have is like an Arri Alexa, or
Oh wow, it looks like every other movie. So weird.
was that challenging in a way because like, okay, great, I can do a found footage movie, and that helps me budget wise, but now I've got all the pitfalls of a found footage movie to negotiate. Was that part of the challenge in trying to get the movie made?
I don't just see them as pitfall. I mean, I know what I don't like about bad found footage movies, which is typically people arguing obnoxiously, people like giving a bunch of exposition, people feeling like they're even if they're good actors, feeling like they're acting in something that's supposed to feel totally authentic. Um, and the camera rolling when it shouldn't be. So I had to, but I started making this with all of those in mind. And yeah, so it was more like kind of fun to find ways around certain cliches.
The film is set in the Mojave Desert, right? But did you shoot it there?
Yeah. I mean, different areas of different deserts, yes. But it was technically the Mojave. Yeah.
And what are some of the challenges of shooting there?
Mainly wind. In the wide open spaces, there's a lot of wind. That's about it. Oh, going to the bathroom, finding a place to go to the bathroom.
I can imagine the heat as well.
That wasn't so much of a big deal because it's the desert, so it's like kind of dry heat. It's not like disgusting, muggy, humid heat. So it could get really hot sometimes, but it wasn't really challenging. We also like had water to dump on ourselves if we were. It was almost like a mini, like we were pretending like we were in the Bahamas or something, just kind of like lounge and like I brought a fold up dog pool with me and dumped gallons of water in to kind of like chill and drink some tequila out in the desert. So it was kind of like vacationing.
Did you have a big crew for it?
No crew, just me and the actors.
Wow.
There were 2 days where a friend came out to help with a specific shot. Brian Bullard uh, came out as technically crew for like 2 days, so that was fun. But no, there was no like crew or equipment really.
I imagine the other part of the challenge would be putting this whole thing together. Like in terms of like with the edit, did it feel kind of like you're putting together a documentary?
I wanted it to feel like raw footage, so the editing was super interesting. I learned a lot from Lars von Trier's editing. I learned a lot from over the years, so that was probably in my head. And then watching some films and documentaries that felt very found, and then just trying to use logic to decide what was in the remaining footage. If that makes sense.
I know that certain people, this is not going to be for everyone, but what impact do you want this to have on audiences?
Hopefully, they'll. I mean, I made it to hopefully be people to feel adrenaline or scared or just enjoy the watching it. So I'm hoping that people that are excited to watch it enjoy watching it. That's really all. And I know, I feel bad for the if someone's really excited about it and then they don't like it, I feel a little guilty. But I think for the majority of people, they should be able to get some kind of experience out of it that's hopefully unique.
For people who want to know more, where can they find info online?
Best place is the Outwaters Twitter, which is just twitter.com/the Outwaters, or the Instagram, which is at the Outwaters. That's where they can stay up to date on info for this particular film.
Thanks so much. Good luck with the theater run and VOD and all that stuff. I wish you a
Thank
lot of
you.
luck, and hopefully you'll come back for the next movie.
Oh, I'm around. Thank you. It was very nice to meet you.
And that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. Now, as always, for more of our content, including our movie reviews and movie releases, you can find that on our website, norestoftheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, youtube.com/getbehindtherabbit. I'd like to thank my guest, Robbie Banfitch, and our sponsor, JMR Rentals, for Behind the Rabbit Productions. I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.